Welcome to Attican Plays Railway Empire. Alright, hi, this is Attican and welcome to another Railway Empire video. In this one we're going to take a look at Community Update number 1, and I thought to put that in context we would first look at the development roadmap for the game. We recently got the Great Britain and Ireland DLC, and we recently got version 1.7 released. Now, those versions 1.0 through 1. Now it's 8, you'll see in a minute. 1.8 are what they call the free updates. They're basically improvements they've made to the game, and they continually make a good game better with each of these updates. So we've already gotten these updates through the stock, what they call the stock market update. Remember, we got the analyst and some other changes. We got the Great Britain and Ireland DLC. So if we follow our roadmap, the next things coming up are the Community Update number 1 and the Germany DLC. So the first thing out of the gate here is this Community Update number 1. It has been put into the public beta branch. So I have access to that, and most of you do too as well. I don't know how it works on the console. On a PC, particularly if you're running through Steam, it's very easy to flip over and start running the public beta. So we're going to go over there and take a look at Community Update number 1. There are lots of big changes in it. I think you're going to love them. And then just to finish this off while we're here, then next thing up will be our Germany DLC, and then we'll have another Community Update number 2 and France. I don't know in which order, because that's hard to say exactly which comes first. But these community updates are basically where the developers are responding to requests that the players of the game are making, and they're doing a terrific job. So let's go look at Community Update number 1. So we see here in the news the announcement about Community Update number 1, which is version 1.8, which has now been released on public beta. And what it basically includes is a bunch of good stuff. Many more railway buildings, and we're going to walk through these actually in the game. That's the easiest way to show them to you. Some new hotkeys. You can do confirmation of your action with enter. You can take back an action with delete, and you can cancel actions that you've recently taken using backspace. So we've got those hotkeys to work with. We've also got, and we'll walk through this in detail, in free mode you can now go out and change a bunch of settings that will allow you to make the game more or less difficult, mostly more difficult, and I'm all for that because I do think that they've made so many great changes to this game and tried to make it more inclusive and accessible by more and more players that the game is almost getting easy, and we don't want that. We want it to be hard. And so we've got all these things that I'll walk you through to make the game a little harder and more challenging. And so other things you get. Now, this is the one I have. You've heard me probably gripe about this multiple times when you do a scenario. Now, you have the task list will show you if you've completed the task in half of the time. And you might wonder, well, why does that matter? Because if you want a perfect score, each of the tasks that are out there for you needs to be completed twice as fast as they're actually calling for. So, for example, if I'm in 1850, I start in 1850, I have a task that has to be done by 1851, I need to finish it in 1850 in order to get full credit for it and get a perfect score. And now we will be able to look back and see where we might have fallen short if we get one of those scores. I've gotten these scores that are so frustrating, like 19.9 out of 20 on the timing, and not know what task was a little bit shy. Now I should be able to tell that. The mini map is much more useful now, and I'll show you how that changes. That in the game is a better place to show that. I'll show you track deletion in the game. I'll show you this part here, the maximum number of warehouses and parallel tracks. I don't think that really made a change. In fact, I've tested it. It doesn't mean we can build 3 wide bridges or tunnels, unfortunately. But you could just have more and more parallel tracks, super highways of track running out there. And there's now a quick way to set maximum in on your wagons for a train. We can also, if you're a DLC owner, you have a combined European tech tree where you can take all the DLCs that you have and play them on the European maps, of course, provided you own the DLC. So that's enough talk through the words. Let's go out into the game and let's walk through these buildings and the free mode setup and I'll show you some of these things about the mini-map and deletion and all that good stuff. All right, so let's take a look first at those variables, those setup things we can do for free mode. So if you're in free mode, let's go into our favorite, the 1830 in the East. That's my favorite one. So let's go in there, and I'm going to give us plenty of money in case we need it for building stuff later. And of course, we're going to go to Toledo, of course. And these are all the things we're used to seeing, you know, hard, very hard competitors, the realistic or the normal AI kind of track layouts. In other words, do you have to build passing lanes or not? The pause mode, whether or not we have snowfall on the map. Now, this one, I actually don't even know what this means. Territories, sorry, I don't know what that means. We'll have to figure that out later. But here's the change with 1.8. We can go into this thing called advanced settings. And now we have the opportunity to change a whole bunch of things to make the game easier or harder. So what we can do, instead of having just a normal task that would pop up in free mode, we can say, we want professional, which is a little bit harder. Or we want Trainiac mode, which are harder still. So it will give us tasks that are much harder than a regular task to complete. We can do the same thing with cost for track. We can bump the cost of the track up to 200% of its normal cost. Same thing for bridges, 150 or 200% of its normal cost. Same thing for tunnels. We can also have all of the businesses, railroad stations and businesses, to become increasingly expensive. So we can have it start at 100, and each new business can cost more and more and more, up to 200%, so they would cost twice as much. Or we can even bump it up more and make it start at 100 and go up gradually to 300%, or 3 times the original cost. We can do the same thing. Now, this one's a little confusing. I'm not sure I get this one. Income from transport, we're supposed to be able to lower the amount we give for freight, passengers, and mail. But unfortunately, it's marked as 200, 300, and I don't know if that means that this is an easier setting because you get more money, or if it means it's a 200% decrease. That doesn't make sense. I don't know. This one we'll have to figure out what it really means. But where I think it's supposed to go is like this. Innovation points, we have the regular points. We can also make our research slower by 75% or 50%. So imagine playing Trixie, who's already penalized 70%, and now she's penalized 50% on that. She's practically not getting research. And by the way, all of these, it's my belief, they all apply after you think about your character. So cost for track, there's a standard cost for the track. That's 100%. Of course, we know the general gets a 20% discount on his track, but here we could bump that up and change it. But 200% for Don Lorenzo would be a different cost than 200% for the general, because the general's cost would be less, even though it's 200%. So I hope you get that. So service cost, we can be increased to 200% or 300% of their normal cost. So that'd be your supplies and maintenance. And then the stealing staff, the whole idea of a headhunter, you can turn the headhunter on, or you can turn the headhunter off so that the AI doesn't come and steal all your staff from you. And then mergers can be turned off or on. And if they're off, that means that you could still buy out a company and you could participate and get profit from them, but you couldn't actually merge with them and take the big money or liquidate their track and stations and all that kind of stuff. So you could choose how you wanted to play that. So you could turn them off, leave that on. I think this setup, with the exception of this one, which I don't know how that works, the income from transport, this would be about as hard a game as you could play right here. This would be making everything really tough. So that's the setup. Now let's go into the actual game so we can kind of see some of the cool stuff that's been added. And we'll do, and here we can also see that the characters have not changed at all. We're still the kind of quote new unquote characters that we now have. So we can just pick, let's just go with the general, it doesn't matter. So we'll go into free mode here and we'll take a look at what else is new in version 1.8. And this is where it gets kind of cool. So big things we have are a bunch of new stations. So we've got our normal signals and small, medium and large train stations and supply towers. But look what happens down here. a maintenance station, which I'll talk about in a minute, a terminal station. Now, a terminal station is an endpoint station, and that terminal station, there's also a terminal station with signaling control. So let's put one of those. Well, you would use that like on the end of your map, like here for kind of the end point, the terminus of our line. We could put a terminal station in Grand Rapids, provided I had a station in my hometown of Toledo, of course. So let's take Toledo, and we can see, let's just show the other change. The other change is now we have, or another change is a train station with signaling control. So you know the one we had before was this guy, the large train station with signaling control. We've seen those, you know, looks like that. Big old boy with the advanced signals out on the end, the building that allows the folks to go out there and keep track of the trains and set the switches so that the trains go to different platforms. But if we don't use that one, we now have an option a little bit. If we want the signaling controls, a little more cost-effective option, or at least a cheaper option, would be a train station with signaling control. So that would look like this, and that would have two platforms and have the switches on the end, and again the building, so that the folks can keep track of the trains, and it'll use the two stations, or the two platforms, the same way the bigger one, the large warehouse with the signaling control, would use all four. So that would be an option to put that in there. So now we've got, so now we can go up here and put a terminal station with or without signaling control, either way we want it. So let's put a terminal station with signaling controls up here in Grand Rapids, and you can see it sets us up with 4 tracks, this nice looking building on the end rather than on the side. It's a good looking station, I must say. Got your building out here to keep track of the signals, and then we can of course set it up like we would any other thing. So there's a couple there's 4 new things right there. So now let's look at what else we've got. We have, I don't know if you've noticed this, but lately they've been calling these warehouses big warehouses, and I wondered why. Well, here's why. Because now, instead of just this guy, the warehouse with 4 tracks like we're used to seeing, we also have the option of building a warehouse, a smaller warehouse. So we can build a warehouse. Let me find one. There we go. We can build a warehouse. They still have the catchment area and everything just like before. But now we can build a warehouse that only has 2 tracks, and it takes in 3 goods. So rather than the 6 goods of the bigger warehouse, it's half as big. It takes in 3 goods. You can move 3 goods stored from this warehouse, and you have 2 tracks to play with. And just as there's a regular version, there's also a version of a warehouse with signaling control. So we could put in a warehouse like so and have our 3 goods, 2 tracks, and have the signaling controls out on either end, so that we could run like a pass-through warehouse with 2 tracks rather than 4 tracks. So that's beautiful. That gives us more options, and I think the biggest thing to note right away is the price, because we could get a warehouse for $100,000, whereas a big warehouse is $200. So that might make it more tempting, let's say, to put warehouses in sooner since they cost less, but we have to realize they do have less capability. And we also have to realize that these signaling control ones cannot be updated. So this station over here, upgraded. So this guy right here, we can put maintenance on it, but we can't turn it into a 4 platform with automatic signals. So once you pick one with automatic signals, that's your size, unless you go in with the bulldozer and clean up some stuff, clean up some lines, and do it like that to replace it. So so there's your terminal stations. There's your with or without signal controls. There's a regular sized train station with 2 tracks with signal controls. There's your warehouse, both big and small warehouse, 2-track or a 4-track warehouse that holds either 3 goods or 6 goods. And what else we got? I think that's basically it. So there's your new buildings, except for this last one I didn't talk about, which is the maintenance station. Now, if we read what it says about the maintenance station, it can be set up to service trains and refuel them. So it can get supplies and service. And if you make it a stop on a train's line, the train will stop there when necessary and get service. So you could set up a line, like we could have a line like this, with the maintenance service on it, and we could even have like our nice little pass-through warehouse we wanted to do. Let's do a warehouse with signaling controls like this. And we could have a setup where we go Toledo to warehouse to maintenance to Grand Rapids to maintenance to warehouse to Toledo. It's only going to pause at the maintenance station unless it needs maintenance, and then it will actually get the maintenance done. But the advantage is then you have the option of doing all your maintenance kind of outside of the main areas where you're doing business, so to speak. And we wouldn't have to build maintenance in Grand Rapids or the warehouse or Toledo. It would all be covered here in a maintenance station, and that would cost us $200,000 versus 80 plus 80 is 160 plus 80 is 240 for 3 maintenance sheds on these buildings, and it keeps the traffic moving in these buildings because the maintenance isn't done. And because it's got the automated signals, trains can come in, and if there's a train being maintained on track 1, they can go to track 2 or 3 or 4 to go ahead and bypass and move on through if they don't need to be serviced. You could have as many as 3 trains being serviced at one time here and still have a lane open for trains to pass through. So that's a nice addition as well. So we'll have to look into what is it going to mean to us as players, and how it would impact our strategies, and would it be more reasonable now with smaller warehouses to move to warehouses sooner? What kind of strategy would we want to take on our maintenance to get maintenance in? Now obviously this one isn't such a big deal with the engineer because he gets free buildings here, but even with the engineer, you still might consider doing this kind of a setup if you wanted to keep the stuff moving in your cities and in your warehouses and not have maintenance being done there. So those are great changes with the new buildings. So we talked about the setup, we talked about the buildings. Now let me show you, let me quickly set this up. I'll be right back. Okay, so I've kind of set up a little deal here where we've got lines running from Grand Rapids through the maintenance station into the warehouse and over to Toledo, and then of course they could go back. We've got the warehouse is picking up logs automatically through its catchment area. We've got a line running corn into the line there, into the warehouse, excuse me, that was wheat, and we've got a line back here running the corn. Now it's important to make a couple of notes here just so we understand what's going on. We need a supply tower for the corn because the corn never gets to the maintenance station, and the same thing here with the wheat. We're going to need a supply tower coming in, and we could decide how we want to do maintenance about those. I don't want to get into all the design now. I want to keep this brief, but the other thing I want to show you here is, let's say we were setting up that corn line to go in. We could go in here and say, okay, I want to run max. Now we can just click on the minus and get the 8. So we could do one click and we've got the minimum of 8. So that saves you a lot of click stuff that I used to do. We can run into the warehouse, but notice of course we've got the 2 tracks, but we can't specify, again, this is automated signals. So we could run that line in there like that, and there would be a corn line. We could copy it a couple times, whatever. There we go. Now we've got corn running in. Let's do that one more time just to show you do the setup, and then we hit the minus, and that now it runs in a loop. Notice if we keep minusing, or if we keep going plus, it'll go to 8 and then back to 0. So it's a one click, and you've got your minimum of 8, and go down here and dump it off. Run some trains, and now we've got 3 goods going into that, and then of course we could set up our stations. And what we need to do now to get that maintenance working right here is set up our trains to go doot, doot, doot. These are our pass-through trains, like so. And we could have it stop on the maintenance twice or once. Once would work, but keep in mind we're going to even for these trains, this is even going to be their supplies. So they'll get supplied there as well. So we could run those as freight only lines. And off we go. So now let's run a few of those. And I've also got one set over here as another line just for the fun of it. We've got go have a passenger mail line that runs directly to Toledo. Now notice it is not, is it going through? No, it is not going through the maintenance right now, but it would be an easy change. Let's just change that right now. Let's go in here and change this track and take advantage of the maintenance even for our passenger line. And we'll have to explore what this is going to do to express lines. I have a feeling we may not be in love with what it does. But we'll figure that out later. So here we go. So there, now we have the track for an express line, and we can set up a line from here. We're in passenger mail, go to the maintenance, go down here to that other second Toledo station, back up to the maintenance. Now we've got a beautiful express line or a passenger mail line. Run a couple trains that way. We can set one going back the other way. 1, 2, 3, 4. Passenger mail only. Boom. And go. And there we go. Now let's just watch these as they come in quickly into the maintenance station. They'll come in, and you'll notice that some of them will get supplied, some of them will just hesitate, and they'll just move right on. And later on, when they get their maintenance requirements up, they'll actually stop and be serviced in that line. But they can, because it's kind of just a big pass-through warehouse, they can all go through there very easily. And this station with the automated signals manages all that for us and lets these trains flip back and forth easily. So there's a pretty busy little system right there. Look at all that blue, all those trains running, and it all runs pretty smoothly. So there you go. There's the main changes for what's going on. Oh, I did want to show you the delete. This is nice. Let's say that this track right here, for whatever reason, we wanted to change it and delete it, and we decided, oh man, we don't want to run those passengers through that maintenance. Let's change them. Well, or we goofed up and we had a big bottleneck or something. Remember, in the past, we would have to wait until no train was using that track before we can delete it. But now watch what we can do. See, it still says object is in use, but select again to reset conflict trains. So it should be conflicting trains. But here we go. Watch this. I've hit it once. Now I'm just going to hit it again. Boom. There. That second click, what happened to our train? It got actually sent back to its place of origin. And then if we went in and made our train change to our track, now I'm going to just put it back the way it was. But we could have remodeled this or whatever we needed to do to fix the problem we created. But now let's put that track back, and we'll see that when we let this restart, that train just jumped back to wherever it started. Actually, it started down here. So yeah, there it is right there. It went back to its place of origin, which was Toledo, and it starts its route all over. That's so much easier. So that's a big improvement right there. And let's take a quick look at the mini map. Hopefully you'll be able to see this. You can see two things. First of all, it will show us where two companies have built in the same station. Now I don't see, and I also noticed in just playing with this, that the competitors actually will build in cities. Two of them will each build in the city. That's kind of nice. So let's just go put a station of our own in Baltimore here, just so we can show this real fast. So we put a station, let's say we're down in the game, and now we put a station in Baltimore. Now if we look at our map, it's hard to see, but you can actually see a yellow and a blue. Half half the circle is yellow, the other half is blue, and that's telling us that there are two competitors, the yellow and the blue, which is us, in Baltimore. Now the other thing you see is that the circle for Baltimore has a circle around it, so there's two circles. Here's one over here in Louisville like that. If we go down here and look, sure enough, there's an open business slot. So now we'll be able to keep track of all across the mini map where there are open slots, like right down here. There we go. Here's one where the two competitors both built in Charleston. So we've got both colors on the mini map, and it's circled, and that's because, sure enough, there's a business opportunity in Charleston, and there's one over here we can click to in Louisville and see there's a business opportunity. So that's really nice. So I think that's enough to talk about for now. A lot of good stuff. I'll be putting out other videos where we'll start using this on some of the scenarios and see how it impacts our strategies. So I hope this kind of whetted your appetite for version 1.8, which is available now in the public access beta. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it'll help you become a better player, and I hope you'll join us for our next Railway Empire video. Thank you.